Hey Lori, hey Tim, good morning. This is Jason giving you a call from Oddly Travel. I hope that you're both doing well and having a great Saturday so far. I just wanted to record this pre-trip call for you as I thought it might be a good solution in relationship to the significant time difference between us and here in Singapore. I hope this format works well for you. And of course, if you have any questions, concerns, anything that you'd like further clarity on, I'm always happy to answer those over email if that's convenient for you. In terms of the pre-trip call, it's really just an opportunity for us to connect, hopefully go through some important information about your trip and ensure that you're feeling comfortable and confident and ready to tackle India, Nepal, and Bhutan. First and foremost, hopefully you will have received your final document pack by now. We do send that over in several different formats. That includes the Oddly Travel smartphone application. Hopefully you got an email link to download that to your smartphone if you so choose. We also send the physical hard copy in the Oddly Travel binder. And then also in email, you'll get the web link for the itinerary and then also the PDF, which you can download to your phone as well. The most important thing within those final documents from my perspective is just to know that you always have multi-layered support whenever you travel with Oddly. I'm available for you here as a resource kind of before, during, and after the trip. So if you have questions, concerns, issues that come up along the way, you can always feel free to reach out to me directly. Additionally, this is a fully private tour, so you are going to have the services of a guide and a driver while you're there on the ground. Please feel free to ask them questions if you need to go to a pharmacy because you maybe forget a toothbrush or you need some Tylenol. Always feel free to ask those types of requests to the driver and guide. They are more than just sort of there to kind of take you around. They're there to provide that full service experience. Beyond that, I will say too that Oddly provides you with a phone number for our duty manager. That is going to be somebody that sits here in our Boston office. They're available to you literally 24/7 around the clock. You can find their phone number on page number 6 of the final documents. It is going to be highlighted in a blue color on that page, so very easy to point out. And if you want to save that down to your cell phone, it's certainly not a bad idea. Now, I will say that in terms of the duty manager, we try to ask that you only use that in cases of true emergencies. Good examples would be, God forbid, if you ever had an injury or an illness, you can reach out and call that phone number. Please be aware it's set up as an answering service. So it typically will prompt you to leave a voicemail message. It does not mean that no one is there to take the call. It's actually done that way by design. The thought process is that you would just leave a brief voicemail with your name, a brief synopsis of why you're calling, and then the best phone number to reach you. The duty manager will then pull up your file, get all the pertinent details in front of them, and then they'll typically call you back within about 5 or 10 minutes to provide whatever sort of emergency support that you might need. Hopefully that all sounds good. Additionally, if you look at the final itinerary section, you'll notice that under itinerary in detail, there is going to be phone numbers listed on the right-hand side of the page for every transfer, excursion, or activity that we've arranged. That phone number is going to be for the local office partner that we've connected you with. So let's say, for example, if you had an issue in country that maybe was time sensitive, you needed a additional level of support, but it wasn't quite an emergency, you can always feel free to call me or text me or email me. Just keep in mind that with the time difference, sometimes it might take me a few hours to get back in touch. Whereas that local office phone number, it'll be on the same time zone as you, so incredibly convenient and should be very easy if you ever needed sort of a secondary level of support. Great. So kind of moving on, in terms of entry requirements for each country, for India, they do have an e-visa, which hopefully you will have applied for at this point. The India e-visa is done completely online. It takes about, I would say, 20 to 30 minutes to fill out the application form itself. Once it's been submitted, you'll typically get the response back from them roughly within about 48 to 72 hours. You'll just want to download that e-visa from the website in which you applied, and then you'll know you'll have the right copy of it because your picture will be on the upper right-hand side of the page. Additionally, for Nepal, that is a visa on arrival, so you can do that at the airport when you get to Kathmandu. And then for Bhutan, we send you the Bhutan visa, so there's nothing you have to do proactively there. I will just, going back to Nepal briefly, if you want to complete the online application form in advance, you certainly are welcome to do that. It does save you sort of a step at the airport. So if you want to do that, I can send you the link so that you have that application form filled out before you get to Kathmandu, and just saves you a few minutes. Beyond those visas, you'll also want to make sure that you have a valid U.S. passport with at least 6 months of validity beyond your return date. The process is pretty similar for each of the countries that you'll be traveling to. So essentially, what'll happen is you'll land at the airport, you'll go through the immigration process where you'll present your passport along with whatever visa is applicable for that country. They'll give you a nice big stamp in your passport, and then you'll be cleared to go to the baggage carousel area. You'll collect any baggage that you've checked at that point and then continue onwards to the airport exit. That's where our representatives will be ready and waiting to greet you. They'll assist you with getting you connected with your private driver, and generally they'll take you to the hotel for check-in. They're never just going to drop you off at the hotel and say good luck. Of course, they'll come in, make sure the check-in process goes smoothly, and that you kind of know where to find everything. And usually for the following day, when your touring starts, they'll kind of share with you what the plan is. They'll make a suggested start time, which is usually going to be after breakfast in most cases. There is some flexibility. This is your fully private tour, so if you want to sleep in a little bit or get an earlier jump start, just let them know how you're feeling. They're usually very happy to accommodate any specific needs that you might have. If you happen to have WhatsApp on your phone, it's a great way to stay in touch with your driver and guide team. You can exchange contact information that way so that like when they arrive at the hotel the next morning to kick off sightseeing, they can shoot you a quick message to say, hey, we're here in the lobby, feel free to come down at your convenience. Great, so hopefully that all makes good sense. In terms of connectivity, you'll have Wi-Fi access at all of the properties that you'll be staying at. If you'd like to stay connected over the Wi-Fi, that's a free and complimentary way to stay in touch with family and friends back home. If you do end up leaving data roaming on, I would just ask you to double check with your cell phone carrier that, basically you're either going to be hit with a data roaming charge or they'll do what's called an international day pass, where you're typically paying around $12 to $15 for 24 hours of use of your domestic plan internationally. Most countries do cover India. I would say Nepal and Bhutan are probably a little bit more hit or miss by comparison. So again, always a good idea just to be in touch with your carrier to double check on that. Additionally, if you'd like to get a SIM card, if you have an unlocked device, that's something we can assist with at the airport. I would just ask your guide for assistance and they'll be happy to help you sort that out. When it comes to food and health safety, this is also very important. Please do not drink any tap water in any of the countries that you'll be traveling to. We will provide unlimited safe-to-drink bottled water, which will be replenished as needed. You'll also find, bottles of water in the hotel rooms that you'll be staying at. Usually housekeeping will give you a bottle or two each and every day. If you ever need more of that, just let our team know and we'll be happy to find it for you. At the hotels, generally speaking, these hotels, they're catering to foreigners, so they do have a vested interest in ensuring that you don't get sick of their property, because of course that would be terrible for their business. So generally in the hotel settings, again, because they're used to working with foreigners, you can generally put your guard down a little bit when it comes to food and health safety. Typically if they are offering anything as part of like a breakfast buffet, feel free to enjoy that. It's really more if you're out and about. So like, breakfast and dinner, you'll most likely end up having in a hotel setting. So you don't have to be quite as cautious when it comes to choices off the menu. Whereas if you're out and about midday, and let's say you're going, for lunch at a local restaurant, that's where you'd want to be a little bit more vigilant with your choices. Your guide will also help to navigate this. So if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to ask them to help pick an item that, is going to be safe for you to consume. But generally, I would say that you want to avoid any salads, any raw vegetables that might have been washed in tap water. That's kind of the big thing that you'd want to be thinking of. Anything that might be contaminated with tap water is likely to get you sick. I would say too, ordering items that are cooked fresh, baked, fried, things that basically where the ingredients are not sitting around for extended periods. So it's sometimes, easy to think, hey, I'm going to order something that looks, very familiar to me at home, but maybe, in India or Bhutan or Nepal, maybe it's not so commonly ordered. You probably want to avoid those types of things, again, sticking to things that the locals are consuming on a regular basis, just to make sure that those ingredients are remaining super fresh. Coffee and tea, you can have that just about anywhere. Basically that water is boiled, so you can feel free to enjoy that in any setting that you choose. I would say ice cubes, out and about in a local setting, avoid the ice cubes. If it's in a hotel, they probably are going to be using filtered water, but you might want to ask just to be 100% certain that it's safe for you to have. Great. Okay. So moving on, we can talk a little bit about, in terms of Bhutan specifically, one thing I always like to mention, especially up here at Tiger's Nest, is the acclimatization. So as you get into Nepal and then further into Bhutan, just keep in mind that the altitude, it affects everybody a little bit differently. So, first couple of days, usually 24 to 48 hours, you might feel a little woozy. You might feel as if it takes more effort and energy to climb up a set of stairs, or you might feel a little bit more winded. Just keep in mind those symptoms are likely to pass. It's very unlikely that you'll feel it, beyond sort of that 2-day window. But everybody experiences it differently. So if you are still feeling symptoms, please, take a break. Let your guide know that you're not feeling well. It's totally fine to take a rest here and there. Ginger tea is also a great remedy that we can offer you. So if you are feeling unwell, you can ask your, guide or driver for that, and that's really, really helpful. Generally, the over-the-counter medications are not really necessary for most. Those are usually going to be for if you're climbing like 13, 14,000 feet. Whereas in this trip, Dochula Pass, Tiger's Nest, you're probably going to be no higher than like 10,500 feet, 11,000 feet at the highest points. When it comes to finances, each of these countries has their own currency. One thing to be aware of is that the Indian rupee is also exchangeable in Bhutan. So Bhutan has their own currency, the Bhutanese ngultram, but they are tied together, so the value is exactly the same, and they're generally pretty exchangeable. So if you do have leftover currency from your time in India, you're likely going to be able to use that in Bhutan, no problem. Nepal has their own version of the rupee as well. My recommendation in pretty much every place that you travel to is to simply wait until you get there, and then you can pull money out of a local ATM using your debit card, just as you would as if you were using an ATM at home. I think that, one of the important factors to consider is that if you bring US dollars to exchange with a local merchant, you're typically not going to get as favorable of an exchange as you would with your own bank. That's why I always recommend the debit card. But certainly if you want to bring US dollars, you can swap it out at the airport. The hotels will usually swap US dollars as well. You just want to make sure that the bills are crisp, clean, and undamaged. Additionally, credit cards are widely accepted in all of the places you're traveling to, certainly Visa, MasterCard, Amex to a lesser degree, but it's becoming more and more frequently accepted. At the hotels, you'll be able to use credit card for any incidentals. So if you have like room service charges, if you have a spa treatment, all of that can be charged to a credit card and then settled upon checkout. I'd say cash is primarily going to be used for two purposes. One would be for tipping guidelines, and then the other would be for any souvenir shopping that you might do in like a local open air market or a bazaar. Typically, if you're haggling or negotiating, which would be encouraged in these types of open air markets, that's when you want to have cash available for that. And then for tipping, we do provide tipping recommendations in the back of your final documents with specific amounts for each country, so you can feel free to use that as a reference. I would generally say that tipping should only be done at the very end of your time with a driver or a guide, assuming you received great, excellent service that went above and beyond expectation. You certainly would not be expected to tip at the end of each and every day. Again, it would only be when you go to say your goodbyes with that individual that you've been working with. I do recommend too, if you take money out of an ATM, might be worthwhile to stop at a little kiosk and maybe purchase a water bottle, candy bar, gum, something like that. And that way you'll have smaller, more usable change. You want smaller denominations because outside of the driver and the guide, you might want to consider tipping any porters that would be taking luggage up to the hotel room for you. Occasionally, like if you use a restroom at if you're at like a culturally iconic site, you use the local restroom there. There might be somebody, a young person who's handing out paper towels or soap in the restroom. Sometimes I just have some small change, to acknowledge the service they're providing. Again, totally optional, and you'll find more details about the tipping guidelines in the back of those final documents. In terms of a packing list for this trip, I will say that you'll experience kind of a wide range of temperatures. I imagine you'll be in anything from, overnight lows of probably in the mid 40s Fahrenheit, probably up into the low 70s in some cases, depending on, where you're at. So I would say, generally speaking, casual, comfortable clothing, sporty items that are easy to move around in are going to be most important. You are going to be spending a lot of time doing outdoor sightseeing, traversing nature trails. So again, you want to be comfortable doing that. Layers are also going to be a good idea. So sweaters and sweatshirts that you can put on like early morning when you first step out for the day, and then maybe remove as it gets, warmer throughout the course of the late morning or early afternoon. You can always feel free to leave clothing items in the vehicle, which will lock and look after for you. You want to have a good hat, a good pair of sunglasses to keep the sun out of your eyes. I'd recommend maybe bringing a light puffer jacket just in case it does get a little bit on the chillier side. You can also feel free to bring, really good walking shoes. So that might be a closed-toed hiking style shoe, maybe a sneaker perhaps. I always recommend a low top, primarily due to the fact that, especially in Bhutan, you'll be visiting a lot of religious sites. They do often ask you to remove footwear before going inside. So if you have like a lace-up hiking style boot, sometimes that can be difficult to take on and off. So for that reason, I do recommend a low top because just usually it's easier to get in and out of if needed. You are staying at some nice hotels, so I think if you wanted to have a couple of like smart casual outfits for the evening, that would be totally appropriate. There are no dress code requirements for any of the places that you're staying, so don't feel as if you have to. But as a gentleman, I might throw on a polo shirt, maybe some jeans or khaki pants or something like that. But again, totally optional and only if that's something you'd like to do. Great. Some other things to keep in mind. So just sort of looking through your itinerary, we talked about a packing list. I will say that for Ranthambore National Park, you might want to avoid any brightly colored items. So no reds, no yellows, not because you'd be in danger, but sometimes those bright colors can kind of scare off the animals. So I would just say more earthy tones would be appropriate on that day. And just also keep in mind that for the game drives, when you head out first thing in the morning at like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, you're going to be in an open top Jeep traveling at like 30 to 40 miles an hour until you get to the entrance of the park. So on that particular day, I just recommend bundling up a little bit more. You might want to have, again, a jacket on that morning, maybe, a hat that you wear, maybe some gloves just to keep you warm for that drive to the entrance of the park. Otherwise, once you're there, you're moving much more slowly and it's more comfortable. But again, just something to sort of keep in mind. Great. So, I think generally speaking, that sort of hits on all of the points I wanted to cover with you. Just to recap, we talked a little bit about entry requirements, what to expect on arrival, food and health safety, finances, tipping guidelines, packing list. In terms of the electrical outlets, we will provide, usually the hotel rooms will have adapters. They'll have one or two in the room for you to utilize. I always pick up like a 3-pack on Amazon, which I travel with everywhere I go. It's not entirely necessary, but if you're charging multiple devices, it might be worth, considering having some of those on hand as well. But beyond that, I hope you have a wonderful experience. I know we talked about who to contact in an emergency, but if beyond that, if there's anything that's not of satisfaction, we usually get extremely positive feedback from these trips. If there's anything that I can do to make the trip, more exciting for you, more enjoyable, always feel free to reach out. And again, if anything is not of satisfaction, please do make me aware. Obviously, if I don't know that something's wrong, I can't do anything to fix it, and here to support you every step of the way. Have a wonderful experience. Happy travels to you both, and I'll hopefully look forward to hearing all about it when you get back home. Thanks so much, and have a great day.